What the heck? There we go. Hi, Benjamin. Hi, Jasmine.
Hi, Miss S.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm a little chilly, but otherwise fine.
Is school finally open?
Yes, I am in the classroom right now. I'll show you sort of what it looks like. So that's sort of what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, because I heard from Miss Johnson that the 10th graders are going back to school in 3 weeks instead of two. So,
Oh, did they change it?
yeah, I'm not going to go either way, but it's good information to have.
Yeah. Yeah. They the problem is that this changes all the time, right? Some areas it's getting worse and some areas it's getting better and then you think it's getting better and it starts getting worse again. So, good morning, everybody. As you're coming in, please go ahead and turn on your cameras. Thank you very much. All right. We're going to wait just a couple more minutes because we're missing quite a few people and see who we pick up, and then we have to get going. While we're waiting, I'm going to go ahead and put the do now up, okay? So those of you who are here can start putting this in your journal. Leah, Emma, I need to see you on camera, please. Manha, turn your cameras on, please. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Emma. Leah, are you there? I need to see you on camera. I need you to tell me in chat if your camera's not working. So there's your journal entry for today. So those of you who are just joining us, let's please turn our cameras on. I know Benjamin's camera isn't working. I still haven't seen Leah. Jermaine just got here. So please turn your cameras on or tell me in the chat if there's a problem with your webcam so I can officially count you as here. Again, I need to see you guys on cam. Leah, Jermaine. Thank you, Leah. Abdullah, Corey, let's see you on camera so that I can officially count you as here, please. While you're working on your journal. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Corey. As you're joining in, please turn on your cameras and let's get going on our do now, okay? We're gonna wait 2 more minutes, and then if you haven't got your entry finished, you can go back and finish it, obviously, right? But I want to give you a little time to get started. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Haiti. I think everybody's on cam. Thank you very much. You'll see me in the participants list twice. It's because I have my iPad here so that I can see the chat while I'm presenting. So that's what's up with that. Just in case you're wondering, I have not acquired a clone. Not yet, anyway. All right. If you're just joining me, please turn your camera on. You can turn it off later if you need to for sound and video quality, but I need to be able to see you to count you as present, okay? Thank you. That's everybody. Thank you very much. I appreciate that very much. So we'll wait just a little bit longer and then we got to get going because we got some stuff to talk about today. So if you didn't get a chance to finish your journal entry, no big deal. The PowerPoint's up in Schoology and you can finish it later, okay? All right, so. Somebody read this slide for me. How about Haiti?
Called the father of realism, these three playwrights formed the foundation of the theater is what the theater is like today. Their plays even changed how acting had to be taught and how plays had to be staged.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to talk about three people today. We're going to talk about Henrik Ibsen. We're going to talk about Anton Chekhov, and we're going to talk about August Strindberg. So first, we're going to talk about Ibsen. Okay. Who wants to read about Ibsen? Let's do Benjamin. Can you read the section under Ibsen? You there, Benjamin? He might be frozen. Okay, Paul, how about you read it?
Born in Norway, Henrik Ibsen reached infamy fairly quickly. Although many of his plays were considered scandalous, he hated Strindberg.
Yes, exactly. Okay, about Strindberg. How about Jermaine?
From Sweden, had an ongoing rivalry with Ibsen, turns to symbolism, also dabbled in alchemy, and may or may not have given himself severe lead poisoning.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that more and what that, how that manifested itself. It's a good time. How about Anna? Can you read about Chekhov?
A Russian playwright. While he was a contemporary of both of the other playwrights, he basically stayed out of the way.
Yeah, he's got his own thing going on in Russia. Okay. So he's a contemporary of theirs, but while Ibsen and Strindberg are like constantly at each other's throats, Chekhov is kind of just like doing his own thing. Great. Excellent. Good job. Okay. So Henrik Ibsen. And then I put, and yes, my cat is named after him because I was working on an Ibsen play when I got him. Okay. So a quote from Ibsen. Corey, why don't you read this for us? I can't tell if he's out of the frame or if he ran away.
He walked off.
Oh, okay. Can you read it for me?
I don't imagine you will dispute the fact that at present the stupid people are an absolutely overwhelming majority all the world over.
Yeah, exactly. So that gives you a good idea of sort of what his mentality was, right? About how he felt about the majority of people. Okay. Caesar, can you read the first bullet point on here?
Ibsen's life, he spent much of his life outside Norway. He said he could not live in his homeland.
Yes, exactly. So he actually sort of, Marco, that's okay. He sort of self-exiled himself. He spent most of his time outside of Norway, but writing about Norway. Manha, why don't you read bullet point number 2?
Started writing plays about people in trouble.
Yes, exactly. And so that led to number 3, Marco. Yes, exactly. So he's going to write plays that are about people in real life situations, but he's going to talk about stuff that that was like really impacting the lives of these people. Okay. Now, yes, Marco? Yeah. Okay. So let's look at his influence. Okay, so first of all, we've got strong plot. Now, where have we heard this before? The emphasis of a strong plot. You can come off mute or you can put it in the chat. Who said that plot was really important? Come on, guys, I need you to retain this information. Who have we talked about that emphasized the importance of plot? A philosopher. Yes, Anna. Aristotle. Okay, there we go. Remember, what's the most important thing to Aristotle in tragedy? Plot, right? Okay, good. So, yes, Jasmine. Good. So we're talking about compelling storylines. He's going to write about marriage. He's going to reveal problems that in marriages that people didn't really want to talk about. And he's going to talk about the idea that problems are not solved with money. So why is that important? What do you think? Yes, Emma. Yeah. And Marco, good job, right? Before plays taught the middle class to respect the rich. They were, trying to send messages, right? Okay, good. Yes, excellent. Good job. Okay, let's talk about the characters. Jasmine, why don't you read the thing under strong characters?
Multi-layered characters, complex problems, not black and white, started with the characters.
Okay, yes, good. Okay, so what does that mean, right? Well, we have characters. Remember how we talked about stock characters? What was the thing about stock characters? What are stock characters like? Jasmine, cliche. I'm getting generic. A trope. Okay, good, right? So this is the opposite of that, right? We have characters that are multi-layered. They're dealing with very complex, difficult problems. We cannot, like we used to be able to, categorize them in like black or white, good or bad, right? Can't do that anymore. All right. Now, Ibsen started with the characters. He started with the characters. He was like building the world, like who are these people? And then what's the world that they're in? Okay. Questions about this? Do you see how we're evolving from sentimental comedy and domestic tragedy? I need a yes or a no in the chat if you need me to sort of tease it out for you. Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. All right. Excellent. All right. Who hasn't read a slide? Pernasia, why don't you read this slide? Or I can't hear you. Can you try it one more time? Yeah, I still can't hear you. That's okay. I can see that you're doing it. Okay, so Ibsen was a member of the upper class. Okay, so he is still, right, a member of the upper class writing about other classes, right? So that's still happening. He did actually have a sort of an affair with a woman before he was married, and they had a son that he actually never like really saw or dealt with. But after he was married, he pretty much settled down. He wasn't a philanderer. He wasn't, going around cheating on his wife or anything. All right. Now let's talk about the last point. Leah, or Faith, you read this one for me.
Can you say that again?
Just read the last point for me here.
Oh, okay. Dabble in symbolism near the end of his career by incorporating dreams and ambiguity.
Right. So I've included that because I want you to see that even the people who we sort of establish as like the fathers of realism, by the end of their careers, almost all of them have left pure realism by the wayside. And they're starting to incorporate dreams and, new and different ideas, right? And so for Ibsen, that's going to be symbolism. That's what he's going to really turn to. Okay. All right. Good. Questions before we move on to Strindberg? Anything that I can elaborate on for you? So what would you say, like if looking at this, right? What's the new thing that he brings to the table for realism? Okay, Jasmine says multi-layered characters. You're absolutely correct. Yeah. A better storyline. Okay. Anything else? Marital problems? Yeah, in a way, like the stories aren't that simple. Yeah. The idea that he's addressing real issues and they're not as theatricalized as we talked about with domestic tragedy, right? Where it was like, think about, remember how they talked about Therese? And we saw that in the thought bubble. And she was forced to, marry her first cousin. And then, she has this like incredible affair, right? And they drown her husband. That's very theatricalized, right? Not many people are going to like actually deal with that. But maybe a lot of people are going to deal with being in a marriage where maybe you're married to an alcoholic, right? Or maybe you're married to someone who doesn't treat you very well. So we're moving away from this sort of big theatricalized plots and dealing with actual real issues. All right, good. Okay, let's move on to August Strindberg. I think you guys are really going to like him. All right. Eric, why don't you read this quote from August Strindberg for me? Eric, are you there? You don't have your video on. Those of you who don't have your video on, if I don't know that you're there, I'm going to start calling on you. Oh, people are turning their video
Sorry,
off.
what was that?
Read this slide for me, please.
Family, the home of all social evil, a charitable institution for comfortable women, an anchorage for house fathers, and a health for children.
Okay. So again, gives you an idea of how he felt about things. What do you guys think about this?
Quite accurate.
You might agree with it, you might not, right? He obviously had very strong feelings about this. Strindberg is not really a fan of women, as you'll see. All right, let's break it down. Jaden, read bullet point number 1 here for us. You there, Jaden?
What'd you say?
Okay, turn off the music so you can hear me. Read bullet point number 1, please.
That's not me playing music. That's my brother.
I see. Okay, just point number 1.
Born in Sweden, had bouts of extreme paranoia. Oh my God. Probably from Ollie poison.
Yes. Okay. So we'll talk about that, but it's very likely that Strindberg had sort of gave himself some pretty serious cases of lead poisoning. Sundus, bullet point number 2, please.
Married to Marty, was married 3 times.
Yes, exactly. And we've got that he wasn't a fan of women. And let's see, how about I think I've almost made it through everybody. Amal, the last slide or the last bullet point.
Do I read it?
Yeah, that's the last one.
First found success with naturalist plays.
Exactly. So he doesn't start out writing realism. Okay. Okay. So here's his influence, his 2 pieces of influence on theater. Lacey, read me the first one.
Truthfulness, there should be a mirror to life so people can recognize themselves in it.
Yes, exactly. Okay, second one. We'll go back to Jasmine. Oh, I just need you to read this one here. Oops.
Psychological examination of characters believed that female characters should represent the evenness of women.
he's taking his own feelings of women and he puts that into his plays, right? So he is dealing with early psychology. Does anybody know sort of who the first like psychologist that a lot of people were exposed to was? Yes, Emma, Freud, Sigmund Freud, right? So he's dealing with some of early psychology, right? And he's saying that people need to be able to recognize themselves in the people on stage, right? The characters should remind people of real life. Good, excellent. Okay, so again, do you see something similar here than we talked about with Ibsen? He turns to what? What does he turn to? Yeah, good job, Leah. Symbolism. However, Strindberg says that he's going to set his plays in nightmares. What did Ibsen set his plays in or deal with symbolism? Marriage, but dreams. Yeah, exactly. So when Ibsen turns to symbolism, he uses dreams a lot and he calls them that. Whereas Strindberg says, now we're dealing with nightmares, okay? Seeking meaning in a meaningless universe. This is going to come back when we talk about Beckett, Samuel Beckett. Okay. And absurdism. And a disconnect between people and psychology. So when he breaks away from realism, he turns to sort of these nightmares. Okay, finally, Anton Chekhov. Any questions before we move on about Strindberg? So how did Strindberg give himself lead poisoning, you're asking? Well, Strindberg was interested in alchemy. Does anybody know what alchemists were trying to do, or some of them were trying to do? Or has anybody ever heard of alchemy or alchemists before? I'll put it in the chat so you can see it. Yeah, sure. So yeah, Full Metal. Paul says trying to mix magic and science, right? Yeah, okay. So they were attempting to use elements of science to turn base metals like sulfur into gold. Okay. And that process dealt with a lot of lead. And so it's very likely that he gave himself lead poisoning, right? He already had probably some mental illness. So when you combine mental illness with lead poisoning, he gets these like fits where he'll be like super paranoid, he'll get really angry, right? And if you do any research into him and his poor wives, it was just a nightmare. All right, so now Anton Chekhov. Okay, Emma, read our quote from Chekhov.
Love, friendship, and respect do not unite people as much as common hatred for something.
Yeah, okay. So again, you get a good idea of his view of the world from this quote, right? Okay, so he's talking about not so much family, but about people in general. All right, so we're going to watch our crash course theater on Chekhov and the Moscow Art Theater, okay? Let me get you the link for those of you who find it easier to watch without us. And I think I just accidentally, there we go. So there's that. And then I'm going to give you an assignment. Okay. All right. I'm going to turn off my video too, because I think it does help.
Hey there, I'm Mike Rugnetta. This is Crash Course Theater, and those of you of legal drinking age should get your pickles and bites of brown bread ready, because today we're exploring Anton Chekhov, the Moscow Art Theater in the early years of Russian modernism. That means laughter and tears and vodka. Lots of vodka. Also, who is gonna pay the mortgage? Lights up. Early Russian drama looked a lot like the early years of theater in France, Germany, or Italy. There were mystery plays and folk comedies that eventually gave way to neoclassical scholastic plays. Although in Russia, a bunch of the neoclassical plays were specifically anti-Napoleon dramas, so that's a new twist, I guess. Empress Catherine the Great allowed the first professional theater to open in St. Petersburg in the mid-1700s. She even wrote a bunch of not-so-great comedies and her own version of The Merry Wives of Windsor, where all the characters got Russian names. She described her own work as a free but feeble adaptation. Russia's dramatic literary tradition didn't really start until Romanticism took over, led by Alexander Pushkin and Mikhail Lermontov, though their works went unproduced for years because of censorship. And then Alexei Tolstoy, a distant relative of Lev, aka Leo Tolstoy, wrote a trilogy of plays about Ivan the Terrible that pretty much closed the not very thick book on Russian romantic theater. It's the only not very thick Russian book that has ever existed. But fun fact, for a country so state-controlled and censorship-heavy, realism came to Russia pretty early. Examples include Ivan Turgenev's melancholy 1850s comedy A Month in the Country, about affairs on a rural estate, and Alexander Ostrovsky's middle-class comedies and dramas. A.F. Pisemski's A Bitter Fate even followed Zola's naturalistic precepts a decade before Zola wrote them. Nikolai Gogol and Leo Tolstoy wrote more controversial plays. Gogol's was a farcical look at provincial corruption, The Government Inspector, and Tolstoy's a baby-murdering classic, The Power of Darkness, which we looked at in our episode on French naturalism. But censorship meant that these plays sometimes waited decades before being produced. Into this world arrived Anton Chekhov, Russia's greatest playwright and a man who really knew his way around a samovar. Chekhov was born in 1860. His paternal grandfather had been a serf. Chekhov trained as a doctor, and though he continued to practice medicine, he devoted himself to literature, mostly as a short story writer at first. Just as he finished medical school, he developed tuberculosis, but he was financially responsible for his family, so he ignored it. A few years later, he wrote his first produced play, Ivanov. But even though it was a hit, Chekhov considered it a disappointment. In 1895, he wrote his first major dramatic work, The Seagull. It was produced the next year, and it flopped hard. The actors didn't know their lines, the audience booed like crazy. Chekhov ran out of the theater in the middle of the second act and said that he would never write another play. But a writer and theater director named Vladimir Nemirovich Dechenko loved the play and remounted it at the newly founded Moscow Art Theater. Chekhov then wrote 3 more major works, Uncle Vanya, The Three Sisters, and The Cherry Orchard. So what makes these plays so indelible? Well, even though Chekhov's plays are full of incidents like murders and attempted murders and suicides and attempted suicides and who is gonna pay the mortgage, they're some of the first plays to feel like life. Because here's the thing, Chekhov knew that life doesn't include a lot of climaxes or cliffhangers or neat speeches that explain everything. Most of the time it's just about playing cards or going for a walk or having a late night vodka sesh. He wrote, in life, people do not shoot themselves or hang themselves or fall in love or deliver themselves of clever sayings every minute. They spend most of their time eating, drinking, running after women or men, or talking nonsense. It is therefore necessary that this should be shown on stage. Life on the stage should be as it really is, and the people too should be as they are. This doesn't mean that nothing happens in Chekhov's plays or that what happens doesn't matter. Plenty happens, and it does matter, but Chekhov was also comfortable writing scenes that are just less eventful, and it's those scenes that have the texture of life. He also meant many of these scenes to be funny, and often fought with his serious-minded directors to make them funnier. He was a master of subtext, a kind of misdirection in which characters can't or won't say what they really mean, but the meaning emerges anyway, around and under and between the lines. Let's take a closer look at Chekhovian realism through his last play, The Cherry Orchard. Help us out, Thought Bubble. Lyuba Ranevskaya has returned home from some years in Paris with a lover. She learns her home, where her son drowned, will be sold at auction. Her neighbor, Lopakin, a former serf, encourages her to chop down the orchard and divide the estate into parcels for middle-class people to build summer homes. Lyuba won't listen. She sees Trofimov, her son's former tutor, who is now a scruffy student. She weeps. Lyuba is out for a walk with her brother Gaev, her daughter Anya, and her adopted daughter Varya, as well as Lopakin and Trofimov. A homeless man stumbles in, and Lyuba gives him all her money, even though Varya says there's barely enough to feed the servants. Anya is impressed by Trofimov's revolutionary talk of a new world and a new life. She sneaks down to the river with him. Lyuba is giving a ball. It is auction day for the orchard, and the family hopes that a rich aunt will rescue them. The guests drink, dance, and squabble until Lopakin comes in and announces the orchard is his. I've bought the estate where my grandfather and my father were slaves, he says, where they weren't even allowed into the kitchen. I'm asleep. It's only a dream, an illusion. Finally, it's time for the family to leave. Lyuba urges Lopakin to propose to Varya. Lopakin promises he will, but he can't bring himself to do it. Instead, he moos at her, and she throws some shoes. The family departs for the train station, not realizing they've left behind the old servant, Fierce. Forgotten Fierce lays down to die, and offstage, the axes bite into the orchard's trees. Timber, Thought Bubble. We can see Chekhov's prevalent themes and style, particularly his idea that people are sitting at a table having dinner, that's all, but at the same time their happiness is being created or their lives are being torn apart. So I guess that's not all. That's what the ball scene is about. Another playwright would have staged the auction, but Chekhov fills the act with idle conversation instead. And the mooing scene with Lopakin and Varya is a beautiful example of the power of subtext. If The Cherry Orchard is a realistic drama, it also suggests a move toward symbolism, as do the late plays of Ibsen and Strindberg. The orchard represents more than just the orchard. It's a symbol of an old order. And at several points in the play, a mysterious sound is heard, the sound of a breaking string, dying away, sad. Maybe Chekhov would have moved in a more symbolist or expressionist direction if he'd lived longer, but he didn't. In 1904, a few months after the premiere of The Cherry Orchard, he traveled with his new wife, the actress Olga Nipper, to recuperate at a spa town. He became very ill, and after drinking a glass of champagne as ordered by a doctor, he lay down and died. His body was returned to Moscow in a refrigerated car used to transport oysters. Chekhov will always be associated with the theater that made him famous, the Moscow Art Theater. Theater monopolies had dissolved in 1882, and a lot of new theaters had sprung up to serve a growing urban population, but they staged mostly melodramas. But Nemirovich Danchenko, who we've mentioned, and his partner, famed theater director Konstantin Stanislavski, wanted a theater devoted to realism and naturalism. Stanislavski had been influenced by A Visit from the Meiningen Troupe, but was less interested in period-appropriate costumes, props, and occasional mumbling realism, and more interested in psychological realism, acting and staging that would make the characters look real, sound real, and feel real. The two men founded the Moscow Art Theater in 1898. Their first play was Alexei Tolstoy's Tsar Fyodor, and later that year they revived Chekhov's Seagull. The play was such a hit that the theater adopted a seagull as its emblem. They began with a group of amateur actors, aiming to create a troupe of colleagues rather than stars and supporting players. And Stanislavski developed a hugely influential system to train those amateurs. The theater survived the Russian Revolution, and though it underwent several transformations and a split, it outlasted the Soviet era too. If you've studied acting in the West, then you've probably experienced some version of Stanislavski's system. But here's the thing, We don't really know what that system is. Stanislavski was always changing it. In addition to Stanislavski's autobiography, we have 3 books: An Actor Prepares, Building a Character, and Creating a Role, all translated into English by Elizabeth Hapgood. But it turns out that Hapgood mistranslated a lot of stuff. As for the Russian originals, the Soviets made their own edits. And the aspect of the system that's most famous in America, the part where actors are supposed to rely on their personal memories, Stanislavski later discounted. But there are a few parts that we can pretty much agree on. An actor's body.
We're going to go into more detail with that when we talk about acting, okay? So I don't want to go into that right this very second, but I did want you to see the importance of the Moscow Art Theater on Chekhov. So what was different about how he approached his plays than what we talked about with Ibsen and Strindberg? What do you think was different? Yes. Okay, Emma, right. Not all his scenes are very eventful, right? He talks about how like the thing about like showing, normally they'd show the auction, and instead they're not there at the auction. So why would he show the auction, right? The characters don't want to deal with the fact that the auction's happening. So, okay. And I've got people saying they're realistic, felt like reality. So what was the significance of the Moscow Art Theater on Chekhov's work? They made more plays. Okay. Think about what it said happened after he had his first play, right? That was a hit, but he thought it was disappointing. He does his second play, and what happened at the premiere of The Seagull? It flopped. People didn't know their lines. Okay, right? And Chekhov runs out. He says, I'm never going to do another play again. But it's the Moscow Art Theater, someone from the Moscow Art Theater who loved The Seagull, who does it, right? And they're the ones who sort of make him popular. They're the ones that are the reason why he kept writing at all, right? Okay, all right, good. Okay, so you're going to get divided into 3 groups, okay? And each of you is going to get assigned a play. The assignment is in Schoology in today's folder, and you will have the next class to work together. So one of you is going to get Ibsen's Hedda Gabler. One of you is going to get Strindberg's Miss Julie, and the last one's going to get Chekhov's Three Sisters, okay? So let me start making the breakout rooms while you guys go to Schoology and look at the assignment. Okay. So you've got your groups. Any questions about the assignment before you go into your groups? Okay, if you go in, it should be in Schoology under today's folder. Let me see. Hopefully I added it correct. Oh. Oh, no, I didn't put it in there. Sorry, guys. Okay, let me grab it for you. I'll just put a link to it from my Google Drive. Yeah, you're going to work on this next class. You can use the little bit of time you have to figure out who might want to do what, okay? Let me change this to anyone. Okay, so I'm going to post it in chat and I'll post it in Schoology as well. You're going to be assigned. Okay, so there's the Word document. And I'm going to send you to your rooms really quickly so you can see who you're working with, okay? Benjamin, are you there? I need you to go to your breakout room, please. Do you guys have any questions for me? Just exchanging information. Okay. All right. Just raise your hand if you think of anything that I can answer for you. Okay. All right. Thank you. Hey, do you guys have any questions for me? No, no. Okay. All right. If you think of anything, let me know. Okay, Jermaine, I get it. Thank you. Jermaine, that's enough. Thank you. Hello, do you guys need anything from me? Have any questions? Hello? Have any questions for me? Need anything? No? Are we working on figuring out who's going to do what? Okay. All right.